What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are going to go over some NFL draft rankings. Going to be ranking my top 5 wide receivers in this draft class. We are exactly 1 month away from the start of the NFL draft, my favorite time of the year. Incredibly excited about that. So we're gonna be just rolling out NFL draft content over the next month, man. I'm really excited about it. Excited to get you guys all my thoughts on a lot of these different players. Today, like I said, top 5 wide receivers. I'm gonna go over pretty much everything in my scouting notes on all of these guys. You're going to get strengths, weaknesses, projections, kind of a grade that I have on all these guys, and just really how I see their games translating to the next level. And, if you are, following the NFL draft really year round, or at least over the past couple months, you guys know this receiver class is incredibly talented, super, super deep. Just so much options, so many different flavors that you can choose from. So narrowing this thing down to the top 5 wasn't exactly very easy, but I've done it. I've came to a conclusion, trying to finish some final evals the closer we get to draft season. So I'm excited about getting to this one. Hopefully you guys like it, trying something a little different. But just make sure you like the video. Drop me a comment on what you guys thought of the video. Let me know what you guys think rankings wise. Who are your top receivers in the draft? Be sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, all that good stuff. And without further ado, let's get started, man. So my number 5 receiver, I should say, in this draft class is Brian Thomas Jr. Brian Thomas Jr., big time season coming out of LSU last year. He broke out. He turns 22 in October. He's 6'3", 209 pounds, what he weighed in at the combine. Like I said, breakout season, 1,100 receiving yards, 17 touchdowns in 2023. 9.82 relative athletic score. If you guys aren't familiar with RAS or relative athletic score, be sure to look up Math Bomb. But it's just a good way to quantify players' athleticism. But, Thomas ran a 4.33, 40-yard dash, 1.52, 10-yard split, 38.5-inch vertical. The dude's a freak athlete. Really, the scouting report on him is pretty simple. He's an elite deep threat. Last season, 15 catches, 670 yards, 12 touchdowns on throws, 20 yards down the field. That's what he does. He stretches the field for you, comes up with a bunch of explosive plays, just absurd acceleration, long strider that covers ground in a flash, expanding release package. I thought that was the biggest area of growth in his game in 2023. Was he really found a way to beat press. You're starting to see some more thought process, some more refinement in terms of getting out the line of scrimmage. Shows the ability to cross the face of corners, use his hands to keep his frame clean. Something I really liked, especially as the season wore on. Really long wingspan. Like I said, the vertical, 38.5 inches. He's got some bounce to him that allows him to win above the rim, shows contested catch ability. He's a career 47% contested catch guy, which is pretty good. Anytime you're hovering around that 50% mark, it's pretty solid. There's flashes there as a competitive blocker. Of course, he's got the frame to, be a pretty good asset there as well. But I saw some pretty encouraging reps in that regard. In terms of some of the things that I think still need some work, I think his hands are just okay. Saw some focus drops on film, some clunky moments where it was kind of apparent to me that he didn't really know if he was supposed to, kind of go with the diamond or flip his hands. And then, like I said, the focus drops was more about letting the ball kind of get too much into his frame or trying to look upfield, do something with it without securing the catch first. Route tree was very limited at LSU. He ran 2 routes. I mean, he ran hitches and he ran goes. That's pretty much it. He was a monster on those routes, especially, the slot fades, the go balls and stuff like that. But they just didn't ask him to do all that much more. I will say that he does sink his hips fairly well for a taller receiver. But the other thing, he's not necessarily a yards after catch guy. He's not a very elusive player after the catch. When he does get the ball in open field, like underneath on drags or crossing routes, I think he has, the speed to do some damage in terms of just outrunning guys. But he's not a guy that has a lot of quick twitch or, makes a lot of plays immediately after the catch. Kind of the grade I settled on for him was kind of this mid to late first round. For Thomas, he's going to require a pretty defined role as a rookie, I think, while he continues to round out his game. But the speed and athleticism is going to command safety help, or he's going to, demolish you with explosive plays down the field. That's the type of athlete that he is. His combination of height, weight, speed, truly rare. And I think there's enough skill there for me to bet on his development in hopes that he hits a sky high ceiling. So I think, really, Thomas was a guy that I knew was really productive last season, just turning on, college football on Saturdays and seeing him run by a bunch of guys. I think that what LSU asked him to do played very well into his strengths, but I also think it kind of hamstrung his development a little bit. But still a player, turns 22 in October. He's just very early on his runway. I'm excited to see what he does. I think really for me, when I went back to the tape after the combine, I was more encouraged by, his skill set or what he is right now, just because I saw some things against press, particularly even in the Alabama game where he didn't have like crazy numbers or anything like that. But there was several reps where I felt like he beat Kool-Aid McKinstry off the ball, and got him turned around and created separation immediately. And that was just encouraging because, he was better in that regard than I originally, kind of gave him credit for. So, but Brian Thomas Jr., if you are a Steelers fan, on SteelersNow.com, I mocked him to the Steelers, I think yesterday or 2 days ago or whatever, at pick 20. I think he's going to probably be one of the better receivers, definitely on my board, that's going to be available at that time. So we'll see. I expect, the Steelers are going to be heavily represented at the LSU Pro Day here in a couple days, sometime this week. So we'll see. But I definitely think there's a connection there. Let's go to my number 4 wide receiver. That's going to be AD Mitchell, from Texas, former Georgia transfer. If you guys are, subscribers to the channel, or if you guys follow me on Twitter, y'all know that I've been on AD Mitchell for quite a while now. Turns 22 in November, 6'2", 205 pounds. Came in a little bit heavier and a little taller than I think, or not as tall, but a little bit heavier, a little more dense than a lot of people were kind of anticipating down in Indy. Last season, he had 845 receiving yards, 11 touchdowns. Again, that was his first year at Texas. He moved to Texas from Georgia to be closer to his daughter, so that was the reason for the transfer. 9.99 relative athletic score. A 10 is a perfect score. So really the RAS ranks guys 0 to 10, 9.99, one of the best scores we've ever seen from a wide receiver prospect. He ran a blazing 4.34 40-yard dash and a 1.48 10-yard split. Both of those are, around that 90th percentile margin. I think a lot of people were underestimating how fast this dude was. And we'll kind of talk about some of the reasons why that might have been. But 39.5-inch vertical. This dude's a really good athlete. But kind of my synopsis of him as a player: smooth playmaker, deceptive route runner who creates space for himself, really light feet. He manipulates his pace. He goes 0 to 100. He can kind of lull guys to sleep a little bit, but overall, man, he's just a very loose mover, especially in and out of his breaks, can make sharp cuts, really flexible lower half, can sink his hips. He's explosive, quick accelerator, long speed to stack defenders. This dude was one of the better deep threats in college football last season. Could kind of say the same thing about Xavier Worthy, who set the NFL Combine record, another Texas guy. Um, but in that offense, there was a lot of plays left on the field. This is not going to turn into a quarterback bashing session or anything like that. But Quinn Ewers, their quarterback at Texas, just not a very gifted deep ball thrower. I think some of it's arm strength, some of it's accuracy. But their numbers should have been a lot better than what they honestly were, because they were open quite a bit. But with Mitchell, he could defeat press, full route tree runner, excellent on end breakers, digs, slants, double moves. On those double moves, he has a really good ability to set defenders up. He'll use head fakes to get open. He has good hands, especially catch the ball away from his frame. He's comfortable going over the middle. That's definitely things that I like, especially on those dig routes. He's also been a guy who showed up in some really big moments, even dating back to his days at Georgia. Georgia always in the college football playoffs. While he was there, 5 career playoff games, he caught 5 touchdowns. Pretty good. I think that's a cool little nugget for AD Mitchell's profile. In terms of the things that are a little bit concerning with him or that still need work, he could be a bit of a freestyle as a route runner. Some of the timing aspects of route running in terms of making sure you're out of your break while the quarterback hits, before the quarterback hits his back foot. There's some additional kind of and one freestyle moments a little bit. I think the biggest thing for me that's difficult to overlook is there's some effort concerns on tape. There's examples of him just flat out quitting routes. I feel like that there were a lot of times where he wasn't really going full speed, especially if he wasn't, on the front side of the progression, or if he knew that he wasn't getting the football. You can take that how you will, how much of a big deal that is, but it's definitely notable. And it's on tape. So But I think, the production itself was solid but unspectacular. Last year was his best season in college, but the year prior, he had a high ankle injury, I believe, at Georgia that caused him to miss a good chunk of the season. So we just had to wait a little bit on him to kind of fully break out. But, the grade that I gave him a first round grade. He's going to end up being a guy that I'm higher on the consensus. I think he's number 29 or 30 on the consensus board right now. He's been a first round player for me, really dating back since before the season even ended. And, I've really had no reason to move him off of this wide receiver four spot. But ultimately, I think the landing spot's going to matter for Mitchell more than maybe the rest of the guys on this list. Just like the coaching staff, how much can you get out of him? But he's oozing with talent. I mean, I can't help but think he's going to be a better pro than he was in college. At his best, I feel like Mitchell profiles as a big time X receiver who can get open at all three levels. The way he beats press is really encouraging. And, this dude, like at his best, he's capable of being a wide receiver one at the next level. And that's worth taking in the first round. I would love to be in the meeting rooms. I got to talk to him in Indianapolis when I was covering the combine for Steelers Now. Seems like a really good dude. I just want to know like how much he loves football. If this dude is a dude who's going to be who you can get locked in on every play, and he truly loves ball and wants to commit to his craft, the sky's the limit for this kid. And that's the reason why I'm willing to kind of plant my flag on him, because I think he's a really good player who's only getting better. So AD Mitchell, that's kind of one of my guys. We're going to see, how that take ends up looking here in a couple years. But I'm a big believer in this dude's talent, and he's another guy that the Steelers in particular have spent some time with. Wide receiver coach Zach Azani was at their pro day checking out him and Xavier Worthy. So, he's talented, man. I would love to see him in the black and gold. My number 3 receiver, Rome Odunze. I will say this about Rome, man. I kind of had him slotted in at wide receiver 3 for the longest time, and I went back, did a final tape watch right after the combine, and I was even more impressed than I was when watching live or kind of on the first viewing. Nearly 6'3", 212 pounds. This is a bigger receiver. Last year, he had 1,639 receiving yards, 13 touchdowns in that really vertical Washington passing offense, 9.92 relative athletic score. Really, really good for him. 4.45, 40-yard dash, and a 1.54 10-yard split. That 10-yard split was actually a little bit better than I kind of anticipated, because I think of him more as kind of a build-up speed type of guy. But 39-inch vertical matches the tape. If you watched him for Washington last year and all the jump balls he caught, doesn't really surprise you. I think first and foremost, man, the thing that comes like just screaming at you on his scouting report is he's just dominant at the catch point, man. He caught 21 of 28 contested catch chances last year, 75%. I mean, that's an absurd number. Like the elite guys are somewhere in the 50s, and to be at 75% is just unheard of, in my opinion. Body control, tracking ability, both outstanding. It almost looks like there are times where the ball's thrown down the field to him where he's almost like slowing time down or slowing the ball down in the air with how easy he makes it look. Consistently attacks the ball at the highest point. Love that about his game. He's a big receiver that plays to his size. He's got plus play strength and uses his physicality to his advantage. There are some times where you'll see him vary his tempo in his routes. Has good build-up speed to win over the top as well. There's some craftiness as a route runner, particularly down near the red zone. He's got a little shiftiness to him. He does have a punt return background, pretty solid vision as a runner, and he'll fight for additional yards after the catch. This dude he's a really smart and really tough player. He's a little bit, in terms of things I want to see a little bit more of, needs a little refinement. He's a little bit overly reliant on his physical profile. One of the things that I kind of noticed on tape is when he would get pressed, he was almost too comfortable letting DBs get their hands on him. And I think he needs to use his hands more to wipe those hands down. And some of that could have been, he was just so confident that he was going to be able to win at the catch point. But at the next level where everybody can run and everybody's a little bit more physical, you're going against better talent. I'd like to see him kind of refine that and make the game a little bit easier on him, to be honest with you. And I, kind of going with that against press, I want to see a little more varied release package. I saw a lot of speed releases, one way or another, but I didn't see as much variance in that part of his game as some of the other guys on this list. And then the reason that he's at wide receiver 3, even though I think that he's a really, really good talent, is he's not the twitchy or explosive athlete that some of these other guys are on the list, particularly the top two receivers. I think they're just a little bit better in that regard. But he's still pretty good athlete, man. A 9.92 relative athletic score. I mean, he's a very good athlete. I just don't think he's like quantifiably elite in any of those regards. I gave him a top 10 grade. He's a top 10 player in this class for me. He's wide receiver in 3 in this draft class. But Odunze is anything but a consolation prize, man. He's very well rounded and that type of skill set. He features no glaring weaknesses. There's nothing about his game that gives me a lot of pause. There are no fatal flaws that I think are going to just immediately, sink his pro career or anything like that. I think he should immediately become a high volume quarterback friendly target at the next level. This is a guy who, again, wide receiver one type of potential and someone who's going to be a really good player for a long time. And, it kind of sucks for him that he's in a wide receiver class with some of these other guys, especially at the top. But I don't want that to take away anything from his game because this dude is a straight up baller, and definitely somebody's going to come away with a really, really good receiver, probably in the early teens or maybe even like around the 8 to 9 range of this draft. And they're going to be really happy with their selection. So, but yeah, Roma Dunze, absolutely fantastic player. Number 2 on my list is none other than Malik Neighbors from LSU, Brian Thomas Jr.'s running mate. Neighbors, man, I remember when I was doing scouting last cycle, I was watching a bunch of the SEC cornerbacks, and number 8 was just burning everybody. I mean, nobody could cover him. He turns 21 years old in July. This is one of the younger prospects in this entire class. He's listed at 6 foot, 200 pounds, 1,500 receiving yards and 14 touchdowns last season. Absolutely dominant. Was really, really good the year prior as well. No testing numbers, didn't do anything at the combine. I doubt he's going to do anything at his pro day later this week either. Doesn't really have a reason to, in my opinion, just because this is a blue chip type of prospect. I'm that high on Malik Neighbors. He's a game breaker, turbocharged mover in the open field. This dude just moves different. Like, I don't know how else to really put it explicitly, but he moves different, man. He's all gas all the time. Elite stop and start ability. You see the way he gets in and out of his breaks without losing any type of momentum. Really, really special type mover. He's a true 3-level threat, uses explosiveness, pure speed, shiftiness to separate from even the most athletic defensive backs. I mean, this is a dude who in the SEC dominated some of the best competition that's out there. And he's a highly instinctual player who routinely locates voids in zone coverage, makes throws easier on his quarterback. Some of the ways that he would find open throwing lanes and work back to the football was really encouraging. He's a guy who isn't afraid to go over the middle. I think one of the things that really sets Neighbors apart from a lot of the guys that typically come out that may look like him or even move like him, he has a rare ability to quickly transition from receiver to runner. Really dangerous after the catch. He erases angles from defenders, and he also has pretty good contact balance. This dude forces a lot of missed tackles, man, and I think that's something that's definitely going to carry over to the next level. And if you're looking for a guy who, can create splash plays really on his own, this is a guy you want. He flashes plus tracking ability in late hands. He was a demon last year on slot fades. You get him kind of those two-way goes, get him matched up, with guys in off coverage or safeties, and it's over. I mean, he made you pay nonstop. Felt like last year nobody could really cover him on those type of routes. Played over 50% of his snaps in the slot, and that did keep him away from press coverage a little bit. And I do think that there is some room for improvement against press. I think, as he starts out at the next level, there is going to be, something to watch for in terms of like how consistently he can, get guys' hands off of him at the line of scrimmage and what his release package is going to look like. Just because he spent a lot of time off the ball and in the slot in college, where it's more difficult to press. So he's not a physically imposing above the rim threat either. This is a guy who's really going to make his money with speed, acceleration, and athleticism. He's an explosive guy, but he's not, I think that he would probably jump well just because of how explosive he is. And those type of guys typically are pretty good leapers too. But he doesn't necessarily always high point the ball at the highest point. He's a guy who, doesn't exactly like win those above the rim opportunities like some of the other guys, like Odunze does, or like the number one player on this list does. But in terms of like a grade, he's a top five player in the class for me. He's a blue chip type of player. I think in most classes, Neighbors would be a runaway wide receiver one choice. But he's absolutely still deserving of being one of the first players drafted on draft weekend. Movement skills and playmaking ability, incredibly exciting. Like I said, I think he starts out probably as a Z or as a slot. But I think with time and practice, you could probably transition him to more of an X receiver role if that's what you desire. But I think he's an all pro level talent and somebody who's an immediate difference maker at the next level. I'm extremely excited to see where he lands. I think for me personally, I have some hopes that he lands with the Chargers. I would love to see him and Justin Herbert work, especially with how many targets have been vacated there. I think that would be a excellent fit. But Neighbors is an awesome player, man, and one of the honestly most fun players that I've had fun watching just live over the past couple of years. Um, but I'm extremely excited about him at the next level, man. He's gonna be a freak. And then, number one, I feel like this is really chalky, depending on who you are. I know there's some people that have Neighbors at wide receiver one right now, and I don't blame you because of how much, I like Neighbors. Like I said, blue chip player for me, but I can't waver off Marvin Harrison Jr. as my number one receiver in this class. Man, I just even this morning, I went back and watched like two more games of him. I wanted to go back and watch the final game of the season against Michigan, and then I watched the game from earlier this season as well. And the dude's incredible. I mean, he turns 22 in August. He's listed 6'4", 205 pounds. He had 1,200 yards and 14 touchdowns each of the past two seasons. You got to think about it, man. Like this is a dude that went from C.J. Stroud, who had one of the best rookie seasons we've ever seen at the NFL level. He gets extremely underwhelming quarterback play, like a huge drop off to the guy that they had playing quarterback last year, and he was still more productive on a route or yards per route basis. I mean, this dude was freaking awesome. Ever since the bowl game versus Utah, when he was a true freshman, he had 3 touchdowns. Really, ever since that point, he's just been one of the most dominant players in college football that we've seen in quite some time, to be honest with you. Kind of like Neighbors, Harrison didn't work out in Indianapolis. He didn't do like really anything. He didn't do media availability. But there's a lot to like with his profile. NFL bloodlines, obviously the son of Hall of Fame wideout Marvin Harrison, former Colt, pros pro who just knows how to get open, man. Everything looks so incredibly easy for him. It almost looks like he's playing on rookie mode. His footwork's excellent. He's nearly untouchable versus press coverage. He's fluid, flexible. His change of direction ability is very good, especially when you factor in his size. Body control, hand-eye coordination, superb. You see it anytime he's working vertically. Those things just really stand out. But he's got the frame and the toughness to also absorb contact at the catch point. That's probably one of the biggest differences between him and his dad. Is he's a lot bigger. His dad was never known as a guy who wanted to take on a bunch of contact. Harrison does. He makes tough catches. He'll go over the middle. And he's got good long speed to stack cornerbacks vertically as well. Not necessarily a burner or a blazer. But one of the things I like about Harrison is like in 2023, I think we saw him create even more separation. And then I think we saw, because of the quarterback play being so poor, we got to see him adjust to a bunch of poorly thrown footballs. So he has plenty of practice adjusting to, throws, low, high, left, right, everything. This is a dude who, if you throw it in his vicinity, he's basically an accuracy or an inaccuracy eraser. In terms of like the things or the negative parts of his scouting report, it's really hard to pick apart flaws for this dude's game. I will say that he's not a dynamic player after the catch. He's not going to be a guy that makes a bunch of guys miss. He's just not that type of player. He's a guy that can, consistently get open. He's going to create a bunch of first downs. He can get open down the field as well. But if you're looking for a guy that's going to make a bunch of guys miss and churn out yards after catch, that's not the type of player he is. And then really, like, I'm just trying to reach in terms of maybe things that I could say. I mean, some people have compared him, Megatron, Julio, like generational type of players. And those expectations are going to be really difficult to live up to. I think he's got it in him. Um, but in terms of like Calvin or Julio, some of the more like recent generational players that we've seen, he's not that level of athlete. Like he's a very, very good athlete, especially for his size. But in terms of like straight line speed or explosiveness, like he's not Julio or, Calvin always to me because he was like 240 and had incredible movement skills and speed. I don't know that we'll see very many people ever again like him that was that talented. But those are pretty much the flaws. I mean, there's really not very much there that he, needs to work on. I mean, he's just so incredibly refined. Um, I gave him a top 3 grade. Again, a blue chip type of prospect. Harrison honestly could have left school last year as a sophomore in 2023 and been the first wide receiver off the board. And he's going to enter the NFL as a wide receiver without a doubt in my mind. There's no such thing as this bust proof prospect, but he's about as close as it gets, man. As far as like limiting risk and taking on a bunch of potential upside, Harrison is that guy. His talent's limitless. He has all the tools to transform into an alpha at the next level. Whatever you need or whatever you want at the receiver position, Marvin Harrison Jr. can do it. He's an incredibly exciting player, someone that I anticipate being off the board extremely early. Where that is, we'll just have to see. But I think that, Arizona is probably the most likely place that he'll land, or basically whoever takes the first receiver is who I think is going to get Marvin Harrison Jr. But incredible player. He's going to have a long road ahead of him in terms of trying to live up to his father's legacy. But he's definitely got the game to do it, man. He's a baller. So let me know what you guys think about the video. If y'all want to see me do more rankings, I actually got this idea from one of my Twitter followers. Hit me up. Actually, it was 2 different people. One hit me up in my mentions, one hit me up in a DM asking me if I would do some rankings for the channel. If you guys want to see more position groups like this, I was thinking about maybe doing corners next. If you guys like it, depending on how the video does, all that stuff. If you guys like this kind of format, I'll be glad to give you guys some info. That way I can help you educate you guys and like give y'all all the necessary info like heading into draft weekend so you guys can be prepared, because I know you guys are probably just as excited as I am at this point now that we're just a month away. So as always, I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate the support. March has been the best month ever since the channel's inception about a year ago, across the board, and I'm so grateful for that. So just please make sure that you like the video, drop me a comment, make sure you sub, turn on notifications, all that good stuff, and I will holler at you guys next time.